I'd be interested in a vid on your views about stage management and hypnosis versus self-knowledge acceptance when it comes to healing. You keep saying stage management, mate. It's state management. Stage management is like sounds and lighting and scripts and that. State management as in your emotional and psychological state on a moment-to-moment basis. So NLP came from the idea not that your emotional state was permanent, pervasive and personal, but that your states, whether it be depression, elation, lust, laughter, whatever, was transitory and impersonal. So it's state management. I remember we spoke about it before. I believe, as you do, that consciously managing our state is necessary for happiness. However, I believe, as you do, that it isn't healthy to try and state manage our way out of painful emotions and circumstances, that acceptance is also necessary for healing. So, I'm curious as to your thoughts on the limits of stage management, state management and acceptance when it comes to healing. I've been thinking personally about it. I've been doing somatic experiencing and it's great, however very, very gradual. And I've been thinking of doing cognitive hypnotherapy to help with an issue or two because I've experienced the profound benefits of consciously cultivating grateful and compassionate internal dialogue and challenging unwanted beliefs. So I'm in a bit of a conflicted place. I hope you find the topic interesting. I hope you're enjoying your travels. P.S. I just thought it's like Eckhart Tolle versus Richard Bandler. Okay, so the first thing I'd say is I think we need to address the false dichotomy that Eckhart Tolle is saying, just accept what is, and it's almost like extreme, let's say it's extreme passivity, it's extremely yin. But Richard Bandler would say, no, you need to get in there as a psychological engineer, get into the mechanics of what's going on and be extremely active. And that would be very, very yang approach. So we could almost say it's a yin-yang approach. However, Eckhart Tolle does say, in my opinion, he doesn't make it clear enough, but he does say that you should do what you can, absolutely, to ameliorate, to better, to alleviate circumstances. So, whatever that is, whatever practical thing you should do it. And he has said, it's in little bits of his lectures. I don't listen to his talks anymore, but I used to drive all over the UK teaching in schools. And a lot of the time I would just listen to all of Eckhart's stuff. So I'm quite familiar with, but it's the devil's in the details, isn't it? So he does say that. He will say, do whatever it takes. It's not, you're so in the now that you don't plan for the future because you're non-dualistic and you know that the future doesn't exist. He's like, of course you plan for your future. Of course you plan your mortgage repayments, pay your bills, whatever it is, but that you don't get lost in that. And the acceptance comes in when we've done everything that you can, rationally and sensibly, to change a situation, and then what you can't change, that's what you accept. And that it's probably that it's quite hard to sort of convey in English and quite hard to just convey in words altogether. That most of what Eckhart is talking about, I think, my personal interpretation that made it work for me, was that it can't really be taken literally. He's talking in the realm of energies. So it's like he actually says linguistically, his construct is, you cultivate the field of now. So you cultivate this very strong present moment awareness. And this is something that people have said to me. They said, oh, your videos, they seem quite intense, you seem very present. How do you do that? And I'm like, I don't really know. I'm not consciously doing it, but when I was younger, I did do a lot of Zen meditation. I was more heavily involved in Buddhism. Martial arts practice encourages it. NLP encourages it, really does. Also listening to Eckhart Tolle a lot made me realise that you can actually cultivate a field of conscious awareness. This will annoy the more scientifically, atheistically minded people because, what's field? What's energy? These are woo words, they're weasel words, they're too ambiguous, they could mean too many different things. So it's almost, I never push Eckhart Tolle on people. I never push NLP on people because I've seen it drive people crazy. Any doctrine, any system, no matter how good it is, if it's heard by the wrong people in the wrong way, could lead to disastrous results, literally suicide. Like a particularly good system of therapy that works for me, you apply that medicine to the wrong patient at the wrong time and the wrong dose, and they could have a total fucking breakdown, a psychotic breakdown as a result of it. So it's difficult because we live in a capitalist environment. When people create systems, they have to market those systems, and it's not just Eckhart Tolle marketing a system, and it's not just Richard Bandler marketing a system. There are publishers to be paid, there are seminar organisers to be paid, and you've got to be realistic about this, and you've got to get down to the brass tacks of what's happening at a business level here. And here we'll get into something a little bit more interesting again. This is a lot like martial arts. So in the martial arts world, people exaggerate the difference between one style and another because they have to. Because if you say, oh, you do karate, don't do karate, you should do silat. You know, karate is stiff and it's hard, but silat is flowing and moving and you know, it's not robotic, you're improvising, you're in the flow. And well, A, that's not true. Not all karate is like that, and B, not all silat is like that. It's a way of selling an idea, and you sell by difference. This is NLP. In NLP, they have the concept of meta programs. So there is a, if you like, meta meaning, I think it means behind or above. No, it's behind. It sort of encompasses everything. Supra is above. Meta encompasses everything. So we run by programs, and some people run a meta program that sorts by sameness, and some people run a meta program that sorts by difference. So if you stick two people together, you let a person meet the two people and you say, what did you notice about those two people? Some will focus on the ways in which they were different, some will focus on the ways in which they were the same. I know, as a unabashed, unashamed, proud salesperson, an ethical salesperson, that in order to sell something, a brand has to be moved on the meta program of difference. Because if I say to you, for example, with the life coaching, yeah, you could do life coaching with me or you could do life coaching with them. It's really the same thing. There's no difference. It's fundamentally blah, blah, blah. That's not a good way of selling a system. It's not a good way of selling an idea. The branding has to be, okay, this is distinct from that. But in all honesty, NLP is very similar to a lot of other different systems, and a lot of the systems are very, very similar to each other. And then you've got a choice, I think. It's like, are you going to choose to focus on the sameness, or are you going to choose to focus on the way in which they're different? On the face of it, though, this is a great question, because on the face of it, Eckhart Tolle and Richard Bandler, it's a perfect concept, because it's ultimate like acceptance and ultimate, no, you go and change it. Eckhart Tolle would be happy with you, you would think it's all just about acceptance of what is, healing and all the rest of it, and Richard Bandler would say, no, you need to go in and move these things around mechanistically. So not only does Eckhart Tolle actually not talk in terms of absolute acceptance and just accept whatever is, no, I mean, it's not, the roots of Eckhart Tolle is Buddhism, and it's particularly Zen Buddhism, and that it's not a passive way of handling things. It's once you've done everything else that you can to make a situation better, then you accept what is. But it's also a meta acceptance or a radical acceptance, as we were saying the other day, that say, for example, you think you're doing to make a situation better, you have to accept that. Does that make sense? So if I'm going to go, I feel depressed, I'm going to actively do something like a hypnotherapy. Like what you were saying, reflects to me a good high level of personal responsibility, because you're saying, I want to get better, maybe I should get hypnotherapy for this limiting belief and that. That's great, you're being specific, you're getting into the mechanics, that's fantastic. But you've also got to accept that you're doing that. You have to radically accept that you're making an effort to do that, and you have to accept that you might get it wrong. And then you have to accept that you might get it wrong, and in trying to get it wrong you might make it right. I don't want to drift off into philosophical head wankery and sophistry here, but there needs to be an acceptance of that which you do aggressively and actively and from a yang energy as well. That needs to be accepted with a feminine approach too. So the one can't escape the other. The yin and the yang are part of each other. So Also with the NLP, when you like, I tend towards a more yang style of approach of intervening with people and saying, no, okay, there's a program running there, there's a strategy, we need to stop it. But if I don't come from absolute acceptance when I actively stop somebody, I believe it won't work. And the whole meta framework that I'm coming from is pretty feminine. The setting is very Eckhart Tolle, is very yin, is very like accept, because I have to accept the clients in front of me, and I have to fully accept them, because if they don't feel my acceptance, they're not going to open up. So in that sense, it's kind of a little bit intuitive and spiritual, and then people will say to me, oh, this is like psychic work, and I'm like, well, I don't think of it like that. It doesn't work for me to think of it like that, but maybe, I don't know. But then once you've accepted them, then you change them, or you're going to try and change them. And I also have to accept that as a limited human being, I could get it wrong. They could get it wrong. They could tell me, metaphorically speaking, oh, it's my left hand that hurts, and actually it's their right foot that hurts. So I'm going over doing all this work on the left hand, and I'm like, is it getting better, is it getting better? And they're going, no, 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 when the whole time it's their right foot that hurts. I've made this point before, that when people map their own problems, we usually map it wrong. It's normal, that's a normal human thing. So when I set out to do coaching with people, we work out like 4 or 5 key objectives that we're going to hit over a 3-session period. That's how I structure the coaching. And the objectives we choose in the beginning are not usually the objectives we're left with in the end, because people will tend to be superficial. And there are lots of reasons for that. Either they can't see where their pain is, or I'm a stranger to them, and they're not really ready to just open up completely their absolute vulnerability at the core of their being to somebody that they don't know and they haven't built up trust with. So then over a period of 3 or 4 sessions we go, okay, this is what we were talking about, but this is the real issue, and you get down to it. So it has to be both. It has to be an integrated approach that is yin and yang, or it won't work. Too much yang, I mean, most of you people who watch this stuff, you're all, there's a ton of people who are actually active therapists or used to be, and a ton of people who've been through therapy. So even you, sir, the strangest dude, I know that you are familiar with people who are too yang in their approach, and they miss the subtleties, they miss because they're not in their intuition, because they're not in the moment, because they're not accepting of the other person. They're just like, well, I'm here to do some NLP. And we're going to do some timeline therapy. And it's like, but you don't even know what my problem is. I don't care what your problem is, we're doing timeline therapy because I'm a timeline therapist specialist. And it's not effective. Or it's effective in a very superficial way that doesn't last. But I know that through conversations I've had with you, sir, and with conversations I've had with other people, there is this idea that NLP is very superficial. It can be. But so can the more Eckhart Tolle style of doing things. It can be very superficial. The non-dualistic approach can be as superficial, as ego-driven, as silly, as head-wanky, as pointless, as, doing anchoring, say. But I'm not a fan of anchoring. There are certain techniques in NLP that I just think are not fantastic, and anchoring is one of them. Anchoring, if you don't know in NLP, is where I say to you, okay, feel confident. And as you're feeling confident, I'm going to tap you in the shoulder right here like this. Feel confident, tap here. Feel confident, tap here. And it's a Pavlovian response, behavioural conditioning. So therefore the idea is, well, now you have a neural link between being tapped there and confidence. So every time I tap you there, you feel confident. It works about as well as, it works in direct proportion to how charismatic the NLP practitioner is. It works in direct proportion to how willing to be submissive to the authority of the NLP practitioner the client is. Do you see what I'm saying? Reading between the lines of what I'm saying here, because it's a huge subject and I can't get into it right now. So you've got to integrate both approaches, basically, and don't feel, you said you felt conflicted. There's no need to feel conflicted. You don't have to absolutely subscribe to one or absolutely subscribe to the other. To bring it back to martial arts, I think our goal should be the same thing that Bruce Lee was trying to create with Jeet Kune Do. What he said with Jeet Kune Do, the ultimate goal of Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's own martial arts style, was that everybody would have their own individual system of martial art that is based on your personality, your experiences, your belief system. Because with Bruce Lee, the martial arts was the ultimate form of self-expression. So you're supposed to be expressing the self. Do you know who else said that? the naughty character who's known as the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, or Osho, he actually said in his earlier days, where he was a bit more cogent and wasn't rambling on about how much he disliked Jews and gays, when he was younger, maybe a little bit more idealistic, less Rolls Royces, he said the same thing. He said when it comes to spiritual development, when it comes to having a system of spirituality, his exact words were, it should be as unique to you as your own thumbprint. And obviously the guy was a bit of a loon, but we can, as Bruce Lee would advocate, take what is useful and just discard the rest. And I think that's useful. I think that's a useful idea to take, that your system of personal development should be as unique to you as your own thumbprint. I am taking cues from everybody, everywhere, all the time. If I think it's going to help my client who is sat there in pain, who's tried psychiatry, who's tried psychotherapy, who's been with counsellors, who's been on the antidepressants and nothing works, and I'll just say to them, look, this is where I'm getting the source from. I'm not coming down from the mountain like Master Yoda and saying, oh, I have all the answers. Maybe this is what it is. What do you think? What do you... And I frequently do that now in coaching with people. I'll say, okay, if I ask you to get in touch with your intuition and I show you this problem, what does your intuition indicate to you about where the best place to go is, or what the correct line of questioning would be for us to follow through? So it's a very cooperative process. It's very organic, and it works well. It works very well, much better than sort of having this capitalist, salesy approach of, this is my system. You know, we missed out step number 7 on my amazing system of how to make you more awesome, and we can't miss out step 7. Rather than trying to apply, what's that expression, to a carpenter, every problem is a nail and every solution is a hammer. You know, you can't do that when you're in the realm of people's internal realities. One of the good elements of NLP is that it you know, depending on the school you go to and who you're being taught by and where the emphasis lies, what they're supposed to emphasize, and what I always emphasize with people is, you must enter the other person's reality as it is. You know, to whatever their reality is, I need to meet you there. I can't go, your reality's wrong, come into this reality, which is one of the central premises of psychiatry. Now, it was Richard Bandler and John Grinder who worked out that that was what was going wrong. If you say, oh, I'm Napoleon told me I can't eat my lunch today and take my pills today, and you go in and say, well, Napoleon is dead and he doesn't exist, and you're not talking to Napoleon, in the mind, I'm giving you a silly example here, but in the mind of the client's going, this guy's a fucking idiot. He can't see Napoleon. Napoleon's right there, bro, but you can't see him, therefore you don't understand, therefore you're wrong, therefore I'm not going to listen to you. You've got to enter the reality, and having entered the reality, having done your Aikido work and met the problem in its own energy and moved with it, having built rapport with it, you can then guide it in another direction. You can't refute the other person's reality. That's good NLP, is to get into that person's reality. And it's not all shallow work. Final point, anybody who thinks that NLP work is intrinsically shallow, I'm sorry that you met the fucking slew of people out there who are dicks, who are ultra cynical, who come at it with a used car salesman approach. That's sad. A lot of people who are interested in sales tend to go to NLP, and they reduce NLP to a verb, and there'll even be cases of people saying, oh, I just NLP'd that guy into buying this car. And what they're basically shorthanding is, I manipulated psychologically that guy to do something he didn't want to do. People then think of NLP and hypnosis in this rather dark light, but what am I going to do? I can't stand here and tell you that shit doesn't happen. It does. There's some very unscrupulous people out there. It's a tool, it can be used for good or bad. I'm not going to stand here and try and, you know, defend NLP. What's the point? You know, I could attack it, I can tell you what's wrong with it, I can tell you what doesn't work, but I'm a mercenary in that regard, because my loyalty isn't to Eckhart, Tolle, Richard Bandler, NLP, Buddhism, Zen. I'm not trying to sell a system here. My loyalty is to the client sat in front of me, that one individual, and they don't care. That's all pontification. Like, am I going to stand there and tell them, you know, oh, and now we're going to do a process of therapy, but I need to give you a fucking 45-minute long history lesson about the experimentation that went into it, the peer-reviewed research, and I've got the research here, and I'll get you a little whiteboard out, and we'll say, what? You don't want to know, do you? It's just like, I'm in pain, dude. I wake up and I hate myself. Can you stop that, please? Yes, I can. If you want to have a chat about it after why it works, then cool, because that's going to help you grow as a person. But there's a difference between healing and growth. There's a difference between healing and change. There's a difference between healing, change, growth and learning. They're all in the same cluster, but they are different. So yeah, don't have a false dichotomy. It would be cool. I remember thinking this when I did my master practitioner NLP qualification. It would be cool to do an NLP analysis of Buddhism, a Buddhist analysis of NLP, and see where the overlap is. It's probably been done. It's probably out there. But you don't need to have a either or. You can take from both and whatever works for you. And in your case, strangest dude, it sounds like you're on the right path. It sounds like, you know, you've identified, hey, there are some core beliefs here, there's some negative internal dialogue that I could do with changing. But perhaps also it appeals to you to do body work, to do meditation, to have a more spiritual approach as well. If it does and that works for you, then don't not do it because you think you've got to subscribe to some external locus of control of what works. You know you better than anybody knows you. You know you better than me. I'm not, you know, this is one thing I would say with my clients is I'm not the expert on you. You're the expert on you. I'm just here to facilitate. I'm just here to help. I'm here to guide. I can be, what did I say a couple of weeks ago? There's a lady I work with who likes to do everything on feeling, everything in the body, everything on impressions in the body. Doesn't like any intellectual chat at all. So I said, okay, that's fine. We can progress in therapy. You can use me as a soundboard. And she said, no, I don't want to use you as a soundboard. I want to use you as a feeling board. I was like, aha, okay, fine. So that's very NLP, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I was coming with the auditory because I like to talk. You might have guessed, I think in words a lot. Wordiness is going on in here. And so I'm always trying to take it back to an auditory frame of thought and intellectualization. And she's like, no. It's feeling. Take it kinesthetic, take it back to the body. So you've got to know what works for you. Generally speaking, in my experience, the more highly sensitive people like to work in the field of just the feelingness, where they feel things. And don't fight it. I encourage it. I say, well, what are you feeling? Where do you feel it? You know, what does it have a colour? Does it raise a certain imagery for you? Is it moving? Is it flowing? Is it, you know, whatever it is, let's work from that and go with that. But you can't, like, it would be incorrect for somebody to come along and say, that's not NLP. Because I saw NLP done over here and it wasn't done like that. You can do NLP in a very brutal way. You can do NLP that is really only applied to selling used cars. Or you can do NLP in a very, very much more bodywork style way of doing things. Final point, I promise. Those of you who are interested in that, you should look up the work of Connie Ray Andreas, particularly her book Core Transformations, where she went deep into one particular element of hypnotherapy and NLP that's called parts therapy, where you look at the conflicting parts inside of you, inside of your mind, inside of our brains that are trying to get different things done, but they have different agendas. A quick example would be, I have a part that we call Mr. Ambition, and he wants to go out there and he wants to, you know, build an empire and go, rah, and let's do this and let's change the world. And then there's another part inside of me that we call Mr. Bodyguard, and he's the person who keeps me safe, and he's the person who's the health and safety guy, and he's like, no, you've got to fasten your seatbelt first, you've got to check everything, and then you have a conflict. So what you would do in parts therapy is you'd resolve that conflict between the two separate parts. But Connie Ray Andreas took it a lot deeper than that. And the way that she took it deeper was by working with people's intuition and by working deeply with what people were feeling. So yeah, I guess that's it. It's a big topic that. We'll come back to it probably on another video. Thanks.